you've rightly alluded to that he wants an agreement on paper, but it actually boils down to the fact that the US would have to be committing troops to really make this worth its while, or at least have other NATO actors that will be willing to assist in their place. Because for the US, they've got this critical minerals deal, but again, it's not as though the Russians are just going to turn a blind eye and say, oh, well, you can carry on with that, and then hope nothing happens.
No, exactly. Well, this is what I don't understand. I don't understand, and maybe we will learn more about this week. I don't understand what's changed, quite frankly, because on the face of it, you've got Zelenskyy understandably saying, we're not just going to give away Ukrainian land. And on the flip side, you've got President Putin still insisting that Ukraine cannot ever become a member of NATO, that it won't accept European troops in Ukrainian territory. So, neither side seems to have conceded anything over the past few months. I'm sort of quite aghast that this meeting's even happening between Trump and Putin.
Well, it's a bit nonsensical as well, given that we've made these commitments to 5% of GDP for defence spending, but then an agreement is likely to materialise, only a month after said meeting. And that begs the question as to what are the real strategic aims here. I think the main point to note is that he wants to bring inflation down at home. So, of course, the temporary gain from basically getting oil and gas prices down for the US domestic audience pays far better for him, because he wants to offset the damage around tariffs, which I think he knows in principle, but he's still pressing ahead with it anyway because he's dogmatically in favour of them. And what solving Ukraine in the short term will allow him to claim domestic successes at home, but it won't actually assist anyone strategically, because Russia will still be in a very dominant position and will consolidate their gains both militarily and economically.
These talks seem to be centred around, a land swap or a land grab that Russia's taken from Ukraine, and what Trump thinks Ukraine should do. But I'm wondering about what Russia is going to do and what can be asked of Russia to give up. And my question is about all these children that have been stolen from Ukraine. I mean, over 35,000 children have been kidnapped, stolen, whatever word you want to use, and just disappeared. And what's going to happen with those children? Would Russia give them back?
It's a very good question.
Standing in a very distressing part of this war, and it doesn't seem to get talked about much. What is happening to these children? They're being indoctrinated, their language being, erased and indoctrinated into a Russian way of life. It just seems to be, something that isn't really discussed very much. It's all about land and the fighting
and resources
and
not resources. So much about people.
Yeah, and there's families that are suffering, and these children must be suffering terribly in these institutions. I mean, I don't know.
Presumably, I think, Ruth, because those children, my understanding, anyway, correct me if I'm wrong, is that they had been taken from the east of Ukraine, the majority of them. If Russia keeps those territories, I guess it will say, well, these children are now Russian citizens, and, maybe they can be returned to their families if those families still live in these eastern regions that are now occupied by Russia. But ultimately, they're not going to be reunited with families who've moved further west to escape the war. I mean, I think you're right to raise it there. There's been very little discussion of it. What I find extraordinary in all of the discussion of these peace terms, or ceasefire terms, actually, it's not peace terms, it's ceasefire terms to begin with, in the papers, is Russia's not really being asked to concede anything. The only request is that they just stick to the front line that they've advanced towards so far, and that they don't go any further. That's not really conceding anything, though, is it?
No. It's just, the tactic is to be so aggressive and then be rewarded for it.
Yeah,
in my view, and that's what Trump seems like he's going to be doing.
This narrative that Trump is going to sell out the Ukrainians is totally bogus. It's the West that sold out the Ukrainians. It's the West that got the Ukrainians involved in the war in the first place. It's the West that talked the Ukrainians out of taking a deal in April of 2022. And it's the West that keeps pumping arms into Ukraine, saying, you can win, when they can never win.
Ukrainians, in April 2022... Ukrainians absolutely wanted to keep on fighting. No, it wasn't.
That's absolutely not true. I'm sorry.
It is. All of the public opinion in Ukraine was pro trying to repel the Russian invasion. That's a fact.
Right. So the fact is there were talks in Turkey. There was a deal on the table. Boris Johnson turned up in Ukraine under the orders of Biden, and they talked them out of it and said, you can win this war. When anyone with any common sense knows Ukraine could have never have won this war, they don't have the manpower. It's why they will lose the war, and the only person that can stop it is Putin. Putin's actually been very clear with what he wants. He's always said...
Well, he wants everything, yeah. He wants whatever he can get.
No, he doesn't want the whole of Ukraine. He wants.
Well, he did. He tried to take it. He tried to take the whole of Ukraine.
He tried to take Kiev as a quick end to the war.
Take the capital and then the whole country falls. What do you want about? You can't say that he didn't want the whole of Ukraine.
He didn't want the whole... because...
Do you belong to his inner circle or something, Nick?
No, I don't. I was waiting for the Putin apologist kind of attitude.
Well, you do sound quite apologetic towards him.
Well, no, it's called... But listen, there's plenty of military figures that said this is a bad war to get involved in the first place.
Well, he shouldn't have invaded then, should he? Russia shouldn't have invaded then.
Well,
all of the blame is on Russia for this war. All of the blame is on Russia for this war.
The blame is on NATO and the West for pushing into Russian territory.
No, when did we push into Russian territory?
By inviting Ukraine into NATO. America would...
Ukraine hasn't joined NATO, and NATO didn't invade Russian territory.
But we're not talking about invasion. So if you want to talk about...
You said we pushed into Russian territory.
We pushed it. We had military and arms being filed into Ukraine. We were giving Ukraine masses of arms before 2022.
Yeah, but that's still not taking territory from Russia.
If Russia was pumping arms into Mexico or Cuba or somewhere like that, do you think Americans put up with it? Well, the Americans have something called the Monroe Doctrine. They will not allow any other superpower to hook up with any country that's adjacent to them within their territory. Why would the Russians be any different? It's called a sphere of influence. The Americans observe it, the Russians observe it, the Chinese... Look at what we're doing in Taiwan at the moment with the Americans. Taiwan is Chinese land. Why are we getting involved in that?
But Taiwan disputes that.
Taiwan might dispute it, but the fact is, it's part of the One China policy.
Well, that's China's policy, but you don't have to agree with China, do you?
All right.
Just because China says it's ours doesn't mean you have to say it is theirs.
Paul, I can answer that. Even America.
Okay, I don't want to talk about China now because we're getting off the topic. I want to stick because I've got lots of calls. Yeah, back to Russia. Last word on Russia, Nick, and then I'm going to move on to another caller.
It's not Trump that's selling out the Ukrainians. It's the West by starting this war in the first place.
We didn't start the war. It will only
be Putin that decides when this war ends, and he's made it very clear for no one what he wants.
Thank you very much. Nick must be the first person in history to believe that the person who starts the war is the one that gets invaded by the other country. Definitely not how the vast majority, I think, of people would perceive the way that war transpired. It was Russia that was the aggressor. I'm very happy to have balance on this show. Of course, all views are welcome, including Nick's, but we just have to stick to the historical facts here. Russia invaded Ukraine. They were the aggressors. What do you think about Ukraine being excluded from these talks on Friday? And do you think Trump is going to stitch up Ukraine?
Ridiculous. If you elect clowns to the White House, you get a circus, don't you? And you've got a circus operating there with this ringmaster who is something else, something beyond belief. What's happening in the world when you look at his actions? Is he going to carve up Ukraine, throw Zelenskyy under the bus? Is he going to just do what he likes?
Well, that's the fear.
Well, how on earth can anybody support it? We have failed Ukraine for the last 3 years. went on. I went on with Matt Fry 3 years ago, and I said, "Give Ukraine anything." And Matt Fry said, "Whoa, you're a bit of a warmonger," etc. attitude. And I said, "You may as well give it now." And everything they asked for then, we've given them in dribs and drabs. And this idea that we've been pumping weapons in, we haven't. That's our problem. We've failed them. We failed them completely. The West. It's 1938 yet again. Appeasement. Oh, we'll make peace. You're not going to make peace with this guy. He wants to put the boundaries of Russia back to where it was in 45.